That's 30 points in 2+ quarters. And what he did at the end of regulation and then in the tail end of overtime, we showed it. But, I mean, Jimmy Butler is playing perfect defense on this possession. And well, not this possession here, but on the final possession of regulation. And Kyrie does something that's just vintage Kyrie. I'm just going to pat the ball, dribble, until I find this much opening, get the shot over you, they tie the game.
It was the perfect matchup. You wanted Kyrie on Butler.
Well, I certainly wanted that if I'm the Sixers. I wanted Jimmy Butler on Kyrie, and Kyrie found a way to score, and then in overtime, they're trailing. He hits a killer three. The next time up the court, as soon as he got the ball, you knew it was going up. Hits back-to-back threes to essentially ice the game. Kyrie was great, and aside from the first 10 days of this season, he's been really good for them all year.
Yeah, very impressed what he did. Philadelphia doesn't necessarily, and you can tell in this game, them missing Markelle Fultz, you can see in the matchups, they don't have a starting point guard. Now, Jimmy Butler, I like Jimmy Butler as a player. I like him as a defender, but he can't guard Kyrie. That's not the matchup I want at the end of games, because Kyrie can break him down. If he brings him out on the three-point line with the new NBA rules, he can't hand check him, so he can either shoot the three on him or he can get to the bucket on Jimmy Butler. Now, would I like to have Jimmy Butler one of the people I'm going to switch? But Philadelphia, and them lack of having a point guard and having J.J. Redick on the court for the amount of minutes he's going to play, when they face the Celtics, Kyrie's going to have this type of opportunity. Now, only as you talked about, the last couple of weeks, we're starting to see Kyrie starting to be more offensive. This is the most offensive he's been since Brad Stevens. So ultimately, to me, if they're going to turn this franchise over, if they want to get the season turned around, they need to give Kyrie the ball and let him do what he does special. Richard Jefferson sat right here and said, hey, how do you determine if a player's good or if a player's elite? He said, you determine if a guy's elite, when you're on your game and he's on his game, you still can't stop him. And that's the way Kyrie is. But Brad Stevens, with his system and their movement on offense, we have not been able to see Kyrie do some of the things that he's very special at.
Listen, if Jimmy Butler can't guard Kyrie, then outside of Kawhi, nobody can. Like, Jimmy Butler, one of the reasons I love that acquisition for Philly is because you're looking at different matchups and you're like, oh, now they've got a guy who can credibly defend Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, I just don't think it's fair to Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler shouldn't have to try to shut down the best you said you call him the best dribbler ever.
Sure, absolutely.
Like, that is not the type of matchup that you are getting Jimmy Butler for. Philadelphia needs a point guard. Jimmy Butler is a good defender, but them being absent of a point guard, it shows. That's why Kyrie took 11 shots in the first quarter. That's the reason why he had the second most points he had in the first quarter this season. He knows they have a hole in their lineup, and he went right at it Christmas morning.
Well, it's not just obviously pinned all on Jimmy Butler. This has been a problem for this Sixers team, the inability to close out late in games.
Man, and again, at the end of this game, this Kyrie shot there is to tie it. The Sixers, you don't want to call timeout, that's fine. If you're not calling a timeout there, it's got to be because we know exactly what we're doing. What we're doing, if you're Philly, can't be Ben Simmons dribbles the ball for 10 seconds, and then they do a dribble handoff to J.J. Redick. This is why you lost a playoff series in 5.
Yeah, that's why I don't like Ben Simmons being the point guard.
Fair enough, but that's also why your team's got a coach. Like, this is why you lost the playoff series in 5 last year that you could have won in 5. The end of the game is for Jimmy Butler. And if it's not for Jimmy Butler, it's for Joel Embiid. It's not for a Ben Simmons, J.J. Redick dribble handoff. Like, what are you doing? Ben Simmons, they know, is not shooting the ball. JJ is, credit to JJ for having this long of a career and being this good this late in his career. But he wasn't even having a good game yesterday. The Sixers were fine. They ended up losing by 7 in OT, but they have the ball with 15 seconds left. You don't have to win that game, but you have to get a credible shot. A J.J. Redick contested jump shot off that is inexcusable, and that's the bugaboo with them. They play the Celtics close, and they lose every close game.
Well, speaking of the Celtics, did we feel like this game ended the way it did because of how the Celtics were playing and how Kyrie was playing, or is it because the Sixers were just not able to put it all together?
Well, this game ends a lot like all the Celtics-Sixers games. It seems like the Sixers, they don't know how to close out games, and that's why Nick said, I don't know how he got to the math, how they should have won in 5 and they lost in 5, but that's a Nick-type thing. But This is a problem. It is a Celtics problem. It is a matchup problem. We can't gloss over that because they don't have a point guard. So not only from a defensive standpoint, when you try to set up the game-winning play, you don't have someone to be able to run the offense. That is a Philly problem. That's why they're going to have to make a trade. They're going to have to either get Markelle Fultz back with the team in some type of order, or they're going to have to make a trade, because if not, man, they got no chance in the playoffs against Team Boston, Toronto, and the others in the East.
And the reason I wasn't saying Philly should have won in 5, my point was there were 3 games in that series like last night. With a minute left, it's a coin flip game. And the Celtics are 4-0 in those coin flip games. Like any game they've played between these two teams over the last 2 seasons that's been close, the Celtics have won. That's not just random small sample size bad luck. It's because one team has a plan late, and the other team, Philly last year, said, oh, well, we don't have a closer. That's why. Well, this year you do.
Right.
His name's Jimmy Butler. He can't be on the weak side of the floor watching a Ben Simmons, J.J. Redick dribble handoff to end regulation.
And then real quick, we talked all week about how Brad Stevens has to find a way to get these guys to play. Are you a little bit happier with the way the Celtics are all getting along and playing on the court?
I mean, they won. I think it's important that they won. It would have been bad if they lost, and Marcus Morris was great again yesterday. But, like, I'm going to reserve judgment on that.
All right. Got to take a break. Coming up, a little Dallas Cowboy talk. Is Jerry Jones costing the Cowboys a chance at a long playoff run? That's next on First Things First.
What you laughing about, C? You got takes.
No, everything's on Nick's timetable, though. Hey, Giannis going to be one of the best players next 5 years. No, he'll be next player next